I've always tried to be kind and understanding, especially with my daughter-in-law. But the day she donated my car without even asking me, something inside me broke. She said I didn't need it anymore. Can you imagine? The car I worked years to buy. Gone, just like that. I stayed calm. I didn't yell. I just smiled, because I already had a plan. And when she realized what I did next, the look on her face was worth every second of my silence. My name is Helen, and I'm 63 years old. I've lived in Cedar Falls, Iowa for the better part of 4 decades. It's a small town where everyone knows everyone, where the smell of fresh-cut grass in summer mixes with the scent of apple pie cooling on windowsills, and where autumn leaves crunch under your feet as you walk down Maple Street. George, my husband of 42 years, and I raised our son Daniel in a modest 2-story house with blue shutters and a front porch that creaks just right when you rock in the swing. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. We worked hard for everything we had. That car, a 2015 Honda CR-V in silver, wasn't just a vehicle to me. It was freedom. It was independence. It was the result of 3 years of saving every extra dollar from my part-time job at the public library, where I worked the front desk and helped people find books that would change their lives, or at least make their Tuesdays a little brighter. I remember the day I bought it, 7 years ago. George came with me to the dealership on the edge of town, the one with the big inflatable gorilla out front that dances in the wind. I signed the papers with trembling hands, not because I was nervous, but because I was proud. That car was mine, fully paid off. No loans, no debt, just mine. I drove that CR-V everywhere, to the grocery store on Sunday mornings when the parking lot was still empty and the bakery section smelled like heaven. To my book club meetings at Lucy's house 3 blocks over, where we'd drink too much wine and argue about whether the ending of the latest bestseller was genius or garbage. To the lake in summer, where George and I would sit on the tailgate and watch the sun set over the water, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that no artist could ever quite capture. That car held memories in every scratch, every coffee stain on the passenger seat, every mile on the odometer. Then Melissa came into our lives. She married our son Daniel 5 years ago in a ceremony that cost more than our first car. She's 33, works in marketing for some startup in Des Moines, and has opinions about everything. From the moment I met her, I could tell she was the type who believed she knew what was best for everyone. She'd smile sweetly and say things like, "Helen, you really should update your kitchen. Granite countertops are so much more modern." Or, "George, have you considered a gym membership? It would do wonders for your health." Always suggestions, always improvements, always wrapped in concern that felt more like judgment. But I tried. I really tried. Because Daniel loved her, and I loved Daniel. So I bit my tongue when she redecorated our guest room without asking, turning my cozy space with its floral wallpaper and antique dresser into something that looked like a hotel lobby, all gray and white and cold. I smiled when she brought store-bought dishes to Thanksgiving and placed them on the table like she'd slaved over them for hours. I nodded when she talked about her career goals and her 5-year plan and her investment portfolio, even though all I really wanted to talk about was the new mystery novel I'd just finished, or the hummingbirds that had started visiting our feeder. George and I had noticed things changing over the past year. Daniel visited less. When he did come by, Melissa would stay in the car checking her phone, or she'd come in but spend the whole time texting. She started making comments about our age. Little things at first. "You two must be getting tired more easily these days," she'd say, as if 63 and 65 meant we were 1 foot in the grave. Or, "It's so sweet that you still try to keep up with technology," when I mentioned using Facebook to keep in touch with my sister in Oregon. The comments got more pointed. "Helen, are you sure you should still be driving at night? I read an article about declining vision in older adults." Or, "George, maybe you should let Daniel handle the finances. Estate planning is complicated, and you wouldn't want to make mistakes." It was always wrapped in care, always delivered with a concerned expression, but underneath it all was a message. "You're old. You're incapable. You need us to make decisions for you. I'm not naive. I know what aging means. My knees ache when it rains. I need reading glasses now. I can't stay up as late as I used to. but I'm not incapacitated. I still work 3 days a week at the library. I still do all my own grocery shopping. I still drive perfectly well, thank you very much. I passed my vision test with flying colors just 6 months ago, and I've never had an accident in my life. Not one. Not even a fender bender. But Melissa had decided. And once Melissa decided something, reality didn't seem to matter much. It was a Tuesday morning in late September when it happened. The air had that crisp quality that only comes in early fall, when summer is finally letting go and the first hints of cold are creeping in. The leaves on our maple tree were just starting to turn, edges of gold appearing among the green. I'd spent the morning doing laundry and watering my tomato plants in the backyard. George was at his weekly poker game with his buddies from the Rotary Club. I'd planned to drive to the library for my afternoon shift at 2 o'clock. At around 11, I heard a car pull into our driveway. I looked out the kitchen window and saw Melissa's white BMW. She got out wearing one of her work outfits, a tailored navy blazer and heels that clicked on the concrete. Daniel wasn't with her. She walked up to the front porch with purpose, the kind of stride that meant she was here for a reason, not just to visit. I opened the door before she could knock. "Melissa, what a surprise. Come in." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Hi, Helen. Do you have a minute? I need to talk to you about something important." My stomach tightened. In my experience, when someone says they need to talk about something important, it's rarely good news. But I kept my expression pleasant and gestured toward the living room. "Of course. Would you like some coffee? I just made a fresh pot." "No, thank you. This won't take long." She sat on the edge of the sofa, perched like a bird ready to take flight. She didn't relax into the cushions the way someone comfortable would. She was here on a mission. I sat in George's favorite armchair across from her and folded my hands in my lap. "What's on your mind?" She took a breath, arranging her face into an expression of gentle concern. "Helen, I've been thinking a lot about you and George lately. You're both getting older, and Daniel and I worry about you." Here we go, I thought. But I just smiled. "That's very sweet, but we're doing just fine." "I know you think that," she continued. "But the reality is that things change as we age. Reflexes slow down, vision deteriorates, and driving becomes more dangerous, not just for you, but for everyone else on the road." My jaw tightened, but I kept my voice level. "My vision is perfect. I just had my eyes checked, and I'm a very careful driver." She nodded as if I were a child explaining why I should be allowed to stay up past bedtime. "I'm sure you are. But statistics show that seniors are at higher risk for accidents. And honestly, Helen, do you really need a car anymore? You only work part-time. George can drive you places. Or Daniel and I can help. It just seems like an unnecessary expense and risk." The audacity of it made my blood pressure spike, but years of Midwestern politeness kept me calm. "I appreciate your concern, but my car is none of your business, Melissa. I'm perfectly capable of deciding when and if I should stop driving." Her smile faltered for just a second, a flash of irritation crossing her features. "Actually, that's why I'm here. Daniel and I have made a decision. We think it's best if you don't drive anymore. And since you won't need the car, we've arranged to donate it." The words hit me like a physical blow. What? "We're donating your car to a charity. There's an organization that provides vehicles to low-income families. It's a wonderful cause, and you'll get a tax deduction. Everyone benefits." I stared at her, my mind struggling to process what I was hearing. "You're donating my car? My car?" "Yes. The pickup is scheduled for tomorrow morning. You just need to sign the title transfer and—" "Absolutely not." My voice came out harder than I intended. "That is my car, Melissa. I bought it. I own it. You have no right—" "Helen, please don't make this difficult. Daniel and I are trying to help you. We're thinking about your safety and your future. We've also talked to Daniel, and he agrees. This is what's best for everyone." "Daniel agrees?" I felt my heart sink. My own son, siding with her against me without even having the decency to tell me himself. "Where is Daniel?" "He's at work. He knew this conversation would be emotional, so he thought it would be better if I handled it." Of course he did. Daniel had always avoided conflict. Even as a child, he'd hide in his room when George and I argued. But this wasn't a minor disagreement about household chores. This was my independence, my autonomy, my life. "Get out," I said quietly. Melissa blinked. Excuse me? I said get out of my house. Right now. She stood, smoothing her blazer with a practiced gesture. Helen, I understand you're upset, but you need to think rationally about this. We're not trying to hurt you. We're trying to protect you. By stealing my car. We're not stealing anything. We're making a responsible decision on your behalf because you're clearly not capable of making it yourself. That sentence hung in the air between us like poison gas. Not capable. Those words revealed everything I needed to know about how she saw me. I wasn't a person with agency and rights. I was a problem to be managed, an inconvenience to be handled. I stood up, my legs trembling, but my voice steady. Let me make something very clear, Melissa. That car is in my name. Only my name. You have no legal right to touch it. And if you try, I will call the police and report it as theft. Do you understand me? Her face flushed red. For a moment, the mask of concern slipped, and I saw real anger underneath. You're being ridiculous. This is exactly why someone needs to make decisions for you. You're acting like an irrational child. No, I said, walking toward the front door and opening it. I'm acting like an adult who owns her own property. Now leave. She grabbed her purse and walked to the door, her heels clicking sharply on the hardwood floor. At the threshold, she turned back. Fine. Keep the car. But don't come crying to us when something happens. And don't expect Daniel and me to keep helping you if you're going to be so stubborn and ungrateful. She left, and I closed the door behind her with more force than necessary. My hands were shaking. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water, my mind racing. I needed to call Daniel. I needed to understand how this had happened, how my own son could betray me like this. But before I could reach for my phone, it rang. Lucy, my neighbor. Helen, are you okay? I just saw Melissa leave your house and she looked furious. Lucy lived across the street in a yellow Victorian with a wraparound porch. She was 58, recently divorced, and had become one of my closest friends over the past few years. We had coffee together most mornings and shared neighborhood gossip like currency. I'm fine, I said, though my voice betrayed me. Can you come over? Give me 2 minutes. Lucy arrived wearing her gardening clothes, dirt still on her knees from working in her flower beds. I made us both coffee and told her everything. She listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with each detail. That absolute witch, Lucy said when I finished. Who does she think she is? Apparently, someone who gets to make decisions about my life. Did you call Daniel? Not yet. I'm afraid of what I might say to him right now. Lucy leaned forward, her eyes intense. Helen, you need to protect yourself. What if she actually tries to take the car? She can't. It's in my name. She'd need my signature on the title transfer. And if she forges it? The thought hadn't occurred to me, but Lucy was right to worry. Melissa was desperate enough and arrogant enough to try. I'll hide my car keys, and I'll keep the title somewhere safe. That's not enough, Lucy said. You need to do something bigger. You need to show her that you're not someone she can push around. I thought about that for a long moment, staring into my coffee cup. The steam rising from the dark liquid reminded me of the fog that sometimes rolled across the fields outside town on cold mornings, mysterious and concealing. An idea began to form in my mind, vague at first, then sharper and more defined. What if I did something she'd never expect? I said slowly. Lucy's eyebrows rose. I'm listening. What if I showed her exactly how capable I am? How much I don't need her or her help? What are you thinking? I smiled for the first time since Melissa had left. I'm not sure yet, but whatever it is, it needs to be perfect. It needs to be something that proves beyond any doubt that I'm not some helpless old woman who needs my daughter-in-law to make decisions for me. Lucy grinned. I love where this is going. And whatever you decide, I'm in. You need a partner in crime. You've got one. After Lucy left, I sat in the quiet of my kitchen and let myself think. Really think. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, casting long shadows across the floor. Outside, I could hear the neighbor's dog barking and the distant sound of a lawn mower. Normal sounds. Ordinary sounds. But nothing felt ordinary anymore. George came home around 5 o'clock, smelling like cigar smoke and looking pleased with himself. Won $43 at poker today, he announced, kissing my cheek. Tom tried to bluff me with a pair of threes. Can you imagine? I managed a smile. That's wonderful, honey. He looked at me more carefully, his expression shifting. What's wrong? I told him everything. George's face went through several emotions: surprise, confusion, and finally, anger. He was usually the calm one, the rational one, but this was different. This was personal. She tried to donate your car? His voice was tight. Without asking you? She didn't just try. She'd already made arrangements. The pickup was scheduled for tomorrow. George sat down heavily in his chair. And Daniel went along with this? According to her. I need to call him. Not yet, I said, putting my hand on his arm. I want to think about this first. I want to understand what we're really dealing with here. That night, I barely slept. I lay in bed listening to George snore softly beside me, watching the shadows of tree branches move across the ceiling as car headlights passed on the street below. My mind kept circling back to Melissa's words. You're not capable of making decisions yourself. The condescension in her voice. The absolute certainty that she knew better than me about my own life. I thought about all the small ways she'd been undermining me over the years. The suggestions that were really commands. The concern that was really control. I'd tolerated it because I didn't want to cause problems between her and Daniel. I didn't want to be that mother-in-law, the one who interfered and made everyone miserable. But my tolerance had been mistaken for weakness. My kindness had been mistaken for inability. The next morning, Wednesday, I called Daniel. He answered on the third ring, his voice cautious. Hi, Mom. We need to talk. I know. Melissa told me about yesterday. Mom, I'm sorry. She shouldn't have approached you like that without me there. So you did know about it. A pause. We discussed the idea, yes, but I didn't know she was going to show up, and the idea of donating my car without my permission? Of helping you transition into a safer phase of life. Mom, we're worried about you. You and Dad are getting older, and driving can be dangerous. I closed my eyes, trying to keep my voice steady. Daniel, I love you. You're my son, and I will always love you. But I need you to hear me very clearly. I am not unable to drive. I am not incapable of making decisions, and I do not need you or your wife to manage my life. That's not what we're trying to do. Then what would you call showing up at my house to tell me you're taking my car? We're trying to be proactive, to prevent problems before they happen. By treating me like I'm senile? By making decisions about my property without even consulting me? Mom, please don't make this into something it's not. What it is, Daniel, is a betrayal. You sided with your wife against your own mother without even having the decency to talk to me first. Do you understand how that feels? His voice dropped. I'm sorry, I really am. But Melissa has a point. You're 63. Statistics show. I don't care about statistics. I care about respect. I care about being treated like an adult. And right now, neither you nor your wife are showing me any. That's not fair, isn't it? Tell me honestly, Daniel. If this were about Dad's car, would Melissa have done the same thing? Or is it just because I'm a woman that she thinks she can push me around? He didn't answer, which was answer enough. I need some time, I said. Don't call me. Don't visit. I'll reach out when I'm ready. Mom, I hung up. George found me in the kitchen crying, which I almost never do. He held me without saying anything, just let me cry into his shoulder until I couldn't cry anymore. When I finally pulled away, his shirt was damp with my tears. What do you want to do? He asked. I wiped my eyes. I want to show them who I really am. How? That's when the plan really started to take shape. I spent the rest of that day thinking, planning, and making phone calls. Lucy came over in the afternoon, and we talked through every detail. George listened and occasionally offered suggestions, but mostly he just smiled and shook his head in amazement. You're something else, Helen, he said. I'm just tired of being underestimated. The first step was simple but symbolic. I took my car keys and drove to the Honda dealership where I'd bought the CR-V 7 years ago. The same salesman, Rick, was still there, a little grayer, but just as friendly. I told him I wanted to trade in my car for something new. Nothing wrong with your CR-V, he said, checking the records. You've kept it in great shape. I know, I said, but I want something different, something that makes a statement. He showed me several options, but I knew what I wanted the moment I saw it. A 2023 Honda Passport in red. Not burgundy, not maroon. Fire engine red. The kind of red that turns heads. The kind of red that says, "Here I am, and I'm not apologizing for it." "This one," I said. Rick whistled. "It's a beauty. Brand new, only has 12 miles on it. But it's a significant upgrade from your CR-V. Higher price point, more powerful engine. I can afford it," I said. And I could. George and I had savings. We'd been careful our whole lives, and we had more put away than most people realized. Let's talk numbers. We negotiated for an hour. I didn't back down once. Every time he tried to add an extra fee or push an unnecessary service package, I called him on it. I'd done my research online the night before. I knew exactly what the car should cost, and I wasn't paying a penny more. Finally, Rick leaned back in his chair and laughed. "Mrs. Henderson, you drive a harder bargain than customers half your age. I'm 63, not dead, and I didn't get to where I am by letting people take advantage of me." He drew up the papers. I signed everything, and 3 hours later, I drove off the lot in my new red Passport. The leather seats smelled amazing. The engine purred like a satisfied cat. And when I looked at myself in the rearview mirror, I saw someone I recognized. Not a helpless old woman, but Helen Henderson, alive and fierce and nobody's victim. I drove straight to Lucy's house. She came running out when she saw the car, her mouth hanging open. "Helen? Is that my new car? What do you think?" "I think Melissa is going to lose her mind. That's the idea." But the car was only the beginning. The next step was bigger, riskier, and required help from people I hadn't talked to in years. I started making phone calls. The first call was to my cousin Patricia in Denver. Patricia was 71 and had just finished hiking the Appalachian Trail. She'd sent us pictures along the way, Patricia grinning at scenic overlooks, Patricia camping under the stars, Patricia crossing rickety bridges over rushing rivers. She'd completed the entire 2,190-mile trail in 5 months. "Helen," she said when she answered, "I was just thinking about you. How are things in Iowa?" "Interesting," I said. "Pat, I need your advice about something." I told her everything. Patricia listened, and when I finished, she let out a bark of laughter. "Your daughter-in-law sounds like a real piece of work." "That's one way to put it." "So what are you going to do about it?" "That's why I'm calling you. I want to prove that I'm not just capable. I want to prove I'm exceptional. And I was thinking about your trail hike. You want to hike the Appalachian Trail? Maybe not the whole thing, but something big. Something that shows I'm not sitting around waiting to die." Patricia was quiet for a moment. "You know what? I have an idea. There's a charity organization that does long-distance bike rides for various causes. They're planning a route from Chicago to Colorado Springs this spring, about 1,000 miles over 3 weeks. I was thinking about doing it. You could join me." My heart jumped. 1,000-mile bike ride? You'd need to train, obviously. But you're in decent shape and you've got time to prepare. It's not until May. I haven't ridden a bike in years. "It's like riding a bike," Patricia said, and I could hear the grin in her voice. "You never forget. Besides, the route is designed for regular people, not professional athletes. They have support vehicles, planned rest stops, the whole thing. It's challenging but doable." I thought about it. 1,000-mile bike ride across the country. 6 months to train. The look on Melissa's face when she found out. "I'm in," I said. "Attaboy or attagirl, whatever. I'll send you the registration information." The second call was to my old friend Margaret, who lived in Phoenix. Margaret was 65 and had just gotten certified as a scuba diving instructor. Before that, she'd learned to fly small planes. Margaret had spent her entire career as an accountant, living what she called a sensible, boring life. And then her husband died suddenly at 60, and she'd decided to stop being sensible. "Helen, darling, this is a wonderful surprise," Margaret said. "What's going on?" I told her. Margaret listened, occasionally making sympathetic noises, and when I got to the part about Melissa trying to donate my car, she said a word I won't repeat, but that perfectly captured the sentiment. "What you need," Margaret said, "is to do something that absolutely nobody expects. Something that makes them question every assumption they've made about you. Like a bike ride across the country? That's a good start. But go bigger. What have you always wanted to do but never tried?" I thought about that. When I was young, before I met George, I wanted to learn to fly planes. But it seemed impractical and expensive. And then life happened. So learn now. I'm 63 years old. So? I learned to scuba dive at 64. Age is just a number, Helen. And if you want to really stick it to that condescending daughter-in-law of yours, show her you're not just capable of driving a car. Show her you can fly a freaking airplane. I laughed, but the more I thought about it, the more the idea took hold. Why not? George and I had the savings, I had the time, and I had the motivation. How do I start? I asked. Find a local flight school and sign up for an introductory lesson. If you like it, commit to getting your private pilot license. It'll take a few months, but it's worth it. There's nothing like being up in the sky, Helen. Nothing like it. By the end of that week, I'd registered for the bike ride, scheduled my first flying lesson at the small airport 20 minutes outside Cedar Falls, and bought a professional-grade road bike from a shop in Des Moines. The bike cost more than my first car, and I didn't care. I also bought proper cycling gear, a helmet, and shoes that clipped into the pedals. George was supportive but concerned. Are you sure about all this? A 1,000-mile bike ride is serious, Helen. I'm sure. And flying lessons? Why not? You've always wanted to learn woodworking. Maybe you should take some classes. He considered that. You know what? Maybe I should. Lucy became my training partner. We started cycling together every morning, just short rides at first. 5 miles, then 10, then 15. My legs ached for the first week, and I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. But gradually, my body adapted. I got stronger. My lungs expanded. The miles got easier. People in town noticed. Cedar Falls is small enough that word spreads quickly. The librarian who was always so quiet and polite was now riding around town in bright cycling gear, training for a charity ride across the country. The gossip was both amusing and irritating. Did you hear about Helen Henderson? She bought a red sports car. Helen Henderson is learning to fly planes at 63. Can you imagine? I heard she's going to bike from Chicago to Colorado at her age. I didn't care what people said. For the first time in years, maybe decades, I felt truly alive. Every morning when I woke up, I had purpose beyond the routine of daily life. I had goals, I had challenges, I had proof that I was more than what Melissa thought I was. Daniel called several times, but I didn't answer. Melissa tried reaching out through email, her messages alternating between apology and justification. I deleted them without reading past the first line. George dealt with them both, telling them I needed space and time. How long are you going to keep this up? He asked me one evening as we sat on the porch watching the sun set. Until I'm ready, I said. Until I've proven what I need to prove. To them? Or to yourself? That was a good question. Maybe both. My first flying lesson was on a crisp October morning. The airport was tiny, just a single runway and a few hangars, but the instructor, a woman named Carol who was maybe 50, met me with a firm handshake and a no-nonsense attitude. Ever been in a small plane before? She asked. Once, years ago. Nervous? A little. Good. Respect for the aircraft is important, but don't let fear control you. You're going to love this. She was right. The moment we lifted off the ground, and I saw Cedar Falls spreading out below me, the patchwork of fields, the ribbon of the river, the cluster of buildings that made up downtown, I felt something shift inside me. Freedom. Pure, undiluted freedom. Up here, nothing else mattered. Not Melissa, not Daniel's betrayal, not anyone's expectations or limitations. How does it feel? Carol asked through the headset. Amazing, I said, and my voice came out thick with emotion. We flew for an hour, Carol showing me the basics of the controls, letting me take the yoke and feel the plane respond to my movements. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. When we landed, my legs were shaky, but I was grinning like an idiot. Same time next week? Carol asked. Absolutely. October turned into November. The leaves fell from the trees, and frost started appearing on the grass in the mornings. I kept training for the bike ride, pushing through the cold, my breath forming clouds in the air. I kept taking flying lessons, studying aviation manuals at night, learning about weather patterns and navigation and emergency procedures. George started his woodworking classes and began building a bookshelf in the garage, sawdust covering everything. We were busy. We were engaged. We were living. Then, 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, Daniel showed up at our door unannounced. It was a Saturday afternoon, and George and I had just returned from a 20-mile bike ride. I was sweaty and exhausted and happy, drinking water in the kitchen when the doorbell rang. George answered it. I heard Daniel's voice, tentative and uncertain. "Hey, Dad, can I come in?" "That's up to your mother." Daniel appeared in the kitchen doorway. He looked tired, older somehow. There were lines around his eyes I didn't remember seeing before. "Mom, can we talk?" I considered sending him away. Part of me wanted to, but a bigger part of me missed my son. So I gestured to the table. "Sit." He sat. George hovered in the doorway, protective, but I shook my head. "It's okay. Give us a minute." George left, but I knew he'd be just in the other room, listening. Daniel looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw surprise in his expression. "You look different." "Different how?" "Stronger, happier. I don't know, just different. I've been busy. I heard, the whole town is talking about you. 1,000-mile bike ride, flying lessons. Mom, what's going on?" "What's going on is that I'm living my life. The life I want, not the life you and Melissa think I should have." He flinched. "About that, I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry. Melissa was wrong to do what she did. I was wrong to go along with it." "Why did you?" He rubbed his face with both hands. "Because I was scared. You and Dad are getting older, and I kept thinking about what would happen if something went wrong. If you got in an accident, or got sick, or—" He trailed off. "I wanted to protect you. By taking away my independence? I know how it sounds, and I know it was wrong, but I wasn't thinking clearly. Melissa kept saying we needed to be proactive, that waiting until something bad happened was irresponsible, and I listened to her instead of listening to you." "Why?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Because it's easier to agree with her than to argue. She's persistent. Once she makes up her mind about something, she doesn't let it go. And I'm tired, Mom. I'm tired of fighting about everything." That admission told me more than he probably intended. Daniel and Melissa weren't happy. Maybe they never had been. Maybe he'd married someone he thought he should marry rather than someone he truly loved. But that wasn't my problem to fix. "I forgive you," I said, "but things have changed. You need to understand that." "What do you mean?" "I mean that I'm not going to tolerate being treated like I'm incompetent. Not by you, and certainly not by Melissa. If you want to be part of my life, you need to respect me. Actually respect me, not just pay lip service to it. I do respect you. Then prove it. Stand up to your wife when she's wrong. Make your own decisions instead of letting her make them for you. Be my son, not her puppet." That was harsh, but it needed to be said. Daniel's face went red. "That's not fair, isn't it? You sided with her against me about my own car. You let her speak for you instead of talking to me yourself. What would you call that?" He didn't have an answer. We sat in silence for a while. Outside, a car drove past. A dog barked. Normal sounds of normal life, but everything felt different now. "Are you really going to bike 1,000 miles?" Daniel finally asked. "Yes." "And learn to fly?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because I can. Because I want to. Because I'm not dead yet, and I'm not going to live like I am." He smiled, a small, sad smile. "I remember when I was a kid, you used to talk about all the things you wanted to do someday. Travel to Europe, learn to paint, write a book, but you never did any of it. I was busy raising you, building a life with your father. Those were good years, Daniel. I don't regret them. But now it's my time, and I'm not wasting it." "What about Thanksgiving?" he asked. "Are we still doing dinner here?" I thought about that. Thanksgiving had always been at our house. It was tradition. But did I want Melissa at my table, eating my food, after what she'd tried to do? "If you and Melissa come to Thanksgiving," I said slowly, "she needs to apologize. A real apology, not a non-apology where she says she's sorry I was upset. She needs to acknowledge what she did was wrong. I'll talk to her." "Don't talk to her. Tell her. There's a difference." He nodded and stood up. "I really am sorry, Mom. For all of it." "I know," I said. "But sorry isn't enough anymore. Actions matter. Show me you mean it." After he left, George came back into the kitchen. "How did it go?" "As well as could be expected." I leaned against the counter, suddenly exhausted. I told him Melissa needs to apologize if they want to come to Thanksgiving. Think she will? I have no idea. Part of me hopes she won't, so I don't have to deal with her. But part of me wants her to see what I've become, what I'm doing. The revenge part? George asked with a slight smile. Maybe, I admitted. Is that petty? Probably, but understandable. She tried to take something precious from you. You're allowed to want her to see she was wrong. I hugged him then, grateful as always that I'd married someone who understood me. What would I do without you? Probably the same things you're doing now, he said, but with less backup. The days leading up to Thanksgiving were tense. I didn't know if Daniel had talked to Melissa or what her response had been. I prepared for the holiday anyway, cooking all the traditional dishes: turkey, stuffing, cranberry sauce, sweet potato casserole, 3 kinds of pie. Lucy offered to come over for moral support, but I told her this was something I needed to handle alone. Well, with George. But George didn't count as outside interference. He was Switzerland, neutral but supportive. The morning of Thanksgiving, I was up early, basting the turkey and checking on the pies. The house smelled like butter and cinnamon and rosemary. It smelled like home. George was in the living room, watching the parade on TV and occasionally calling out commentary. At noon, the doorbell rang. I wiped my hands on my apron and went to answer it, my heart beating faster than I wanted to admit. Daniel and Melissa stood on the porch. Daniel carried a bottle of wine. Melissa carried what looked like a store-bought pumpkin pie. "Hi," Daniel said. "Happy Thanksgiving." "Happy Thanksgiving. Come in." They came in, shedding their coats. Melissa looked uncomfortable, which was unusual for her. She was always so composed, so certain of herself. But today, she seemed smaller somehow, less sure. We all stood in the entryway for an awkward moment. Finally, Melissa spoke. "Helen, I owe you an apology." I waited. She took a breath. "What I did was wrong. I had no right to try to donate your car without your permission. I had no right to make decisions about your life. I thought I was helping, but I see now that I was being controlling and disrespectful. I'm sorry. Truly sorry." It wasn't perfect. There was still a hint of defensiveness in her tone, a suggestion that her intentions had been good even if her actions weren't. But it was more than I'd expected, more than I thought she was capable of. "Thank you," I said. "I accept your apology." And relief flooded her face. "Really? Really? But this can't happen again, Melissa. If you're going to be part of this family, you need to treat me like an adult, not a child, not a problem, an adult with my own agency and my own life." "I will," she said. "I promise." We moved into the kitchen. I put Melissa to work mashing potatoes while I carved the turkey. George opened the wine. Daniel set the table. And slowly, bit by bit, the tension eased. We talked about neutral topics: the parade, the weather, Daniel's work project. Nobody mentioned the car. Nobody mentioned the bike ride or the flying lessons. But then, as we sat down to eat, Melissa looked at me and said, "Daniel told me you're training for a charity bike ride." Here it comes, I thought. The concern, the judgment, the subtle suggestion that maybe I was being reckless. But instead, she said, "That's really impressive. I don't think I could do something like that." I stared at her. "You don't think it's dangerous?" "Maybe a little, but lots of things are dangerous. That doesn't mean we shouldn't do them." George caught my eye and raised his eyebrows. Even he was surprised. "And the flying lessons?" I asked, testing her. "Even more impressive. I've always wanted to learn to fly, but I'm terrified of heights." She laughed, a real laugh, not the practiced social laugh she usually used. "I guess we're more different than I realized." "I guess so." We ate. The food was delicious, if I do say so myself. The conversation flowed more easily than I'd expected. Melissa asked genuine questions about my training, and I found myself answering honestly, even enthusiastically. She told me about her work, and for once I actually listened, instead of just nodding politely. After dinner, as we were cleaning up, Melissa said, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why did you start all this? The bike ride, the flying lessons, all of it. Was it because of what I did?" I thought about lying, about saying it had nothing to do with her, but honesty felt more important. "Partly," I admitted. "You made me realize that people see me as old and fragile, as someone who needs to be managed. And I hated that. So yes, part of this was about proving you wrong. And the other part? The other part was about proving myself right, about remembering who I am beyond being a wife and mother. I love George. I love Daniel, but I'm also Helen, just Helen, and I'd forgotten what that meant. She nodded slowly. I think I understand that. I get so caught up in being Mrs. Daniel Henderson, in having the right career and the right house and the right life, that I forget I'm just Melissa sometimes. Just me, without all the labels. It was the most honest thing she'd ever said to me, and in that moment, I saw her differently. Not as an enemy or an obstacle, but as a woman who was struggling with her own demons, her own fears about aging and relevance and identity. Maybe you should find your own adventure, I said. Something that reminds you who you are. Maybe I should. The months that followed were transformative. I continued training for the bike ride, pushing my distances longer and longer. By January, I was regularly riding 30-mile routes, even in the cold. Lucy and I became fixtures on the roads around Cedar Falls. Two women in bright cycling gear pedaling through wind and snow and occasional sunshine. People waved at us. Some even asked to join us. We became a small cycling group, 5 or 6 people who met every Saturday morning to ride together. My flying lessons progressed too. By February, I'd soloed for the first time, just me and the plane, circling the airport, my heart in my throat and my hands steady on the controls. Carol said I was a natural. I don't know about that, but I knew I loved it. The freedom of flight, the challenge of mastering something completely new, the way the world looked from 3,000 feet up. George thrived in his woodworking classes. He built a bookshelf, then a coffee table, then a chest of drawers. Our garage filled with the smell of sawdust and wood stain. He was happier than I'd seen him in years, whistling while he worked, measuring and cutting and sanding with intense focus. Daniel and Melissa came over for dinner every few weeks. The atmosphere was never quite comfortable, but it was better. Civil. Sometimes even pleasant. Melissa seemed to be making an effort to be less controlling, less judgmental. She asked questions instead of making pronouncements. She listened instead of just waiting for her turn to talk. In March, she surprised me by showing up at my door with a request. I want to do the bike ride with you. I blinked. What? The charity ride. I've been thinking about what you said, about finding my own adventure, and I think this could be it, if you'd let me join you. Part of me wanted to say no. This was my thing, my journey, my proof. But another part of me, the part that was learning to be generous again, recognized that maybe this was Melissa's way of trying to bridge the gap between us, her way of showing respect. It's a hard ride, I said. 1,000 miles in 3 weeks. You'd need to train seriously. I know. I've already started. I bought a bike, and I've been riding in the mornings before work. Nothing like what you're doing, but I'm building up to it. Why? I asked. Honestly, why do you want to do this? She looked down at her hands. Because I want to understand you better. And because I want to prove to myself that I can do hard things, not just plan them, or organize them, or manage them. Actually do them. I thought about it for a long moment. Then I smiled. Okay. But you're training with me and Lucy. No special treatment. I wouldn't want any. True to her word, Melissa showed up the next Saturday morning at 6 a.m. in brand new cycling gear. Lucy gave me a look that said, "Are you sure about this?" But I nodded, and we set out. Melissa struggled. She fell behind on the hills. She had to stop to catch her breath, but she didn't quit. Every Saturday, she showed up. Every Saturday, she pushed a little harder, and gradually, she got stronger. It was during one of those rides in April, as we crested a particularly brutal hill and stopped to rest, that Melissa said, "I'm sorry about your car. I mean, I apologized before, but I don't think I really understood what I'd done. It wasn't just about the car, it was about your independence, your dignity. I tried to take that from you, and that was unforgivable. But I forgave you," I said. "I know, but I needed to say it again, to really mean it." She took a drink from her water bottle, staring out at the fields stretching to the horizon. "My mother died when I was 25. Cancer. It happened fast. And before she died, she made me promise to take care of my father. So I did. I managed his finances, his medications, his doctor's appointments, everything, and he resented me for it. He said I was treating him like a child. We fought constantly until he died 3 years ago. I didn't know that," I said quietly. "I never told anyone. Not even Daniel. But I think that's why I was so determined to help you and George. I thought if I was proactive, if I stepped in before problems happened, it would be different, better, but I was just repeating the same mistakes. What changed? I asked. Watching you. Seeing you refuse to be diminished. Seeing you take control of your own life instead of letting me or anyone else control it for you. You showed me that growing older doesn't mean becoming less. It can mean becoming more. I reached over and squeezed her hand. Thank you for telling me that. Thank you for not giving up on me. By May, we were ready. Patricia flew in from Denver, and the three of us, Patricia, Melissa, and I, loaded our bikes onto the support vehicle and headed to Chicago. The ride started on a perfect spring morning, the air clean and fresh, the sky impossibly blue. There were maybe 200 cyclists gathered at the starting line, ranging in age from teenagers to people in their 70s. We were riding to raise money for cancer research, and many of the riders wore jerseys with names and photos of people they'd lost. I wore a jersey with George's sister's name on it. She died of breast cancer 15 years ago. This ride was for her, but it was also for me. The first day was exhilarating. We rode through the streets of Chicago, then out into the suburbs, then into rural Illinois. 73 miles total. My legs ached, my back hurt, but I felt alive in a way I hadn't felt in decades. Melissa kept pace with me most of the day, and Patricia, who was 71, remember, rode ahead like she was half her age. That night, we stayed in a church gymnasium with 50 other riders. We ate pasta cooked by volunteers and compared stories about our day. I fell asleep on a thin mat on the floor and slept more soundly than I had in my own bed. The days blurred together. 70 miles, 50 miles, 60 miles, through Illinois, into Iowa, across Nebraska. The landscape changed from farmland to prairie, to the beginnings of mountains. We rode through rain and wind and scorching heat. Some days were harder than others. Some days I wanted to quit, but I didn't. Melissa struggled more than Patricia or me. There was one day, about halfway through, when she hit a wall. We were climbing a long, gradual hill in the heat of the afternoon, and she just stopped, got off her bike, sat down on the side of the road and started crying. I stopped beside her. What's wrong? I can't do this. It's too hard. I'm not strong enough. Yes, you are. I'm not like you. You're amazing. I'm just ordinary. I sat down next to her. Melissa, listen to me. Everyone here is ordinary. Patricia is ordinary. I'm ordinary. We're just ordinary people doing something hard because we decided to. That's all it takes. The decision to keep going. What if I fail? Then you fail. But at least you tried. At least you showed up and gave it everything you had. She wiped her eyes. I've never failed at anything before. Then maybe it's time you did. Maybe failure is part of becoming extraordinary. She laughed at that, a watery laugh, but a real one, and she got back on her bike. We finished that day's ride together, side by side. 3 weeks after we started, we rode into Colorado Springs. The finish line was in a park downtown, and there were people cheering and music playing. George was there, having driven out with Daniel to meet us. When I crossed the finish line, my legs shaking and my face sunburned and my entire body aching, George wrapped me in a hug that lifted me off my feet. You did it, he said. I knew you would. Daniel hugged Melissa, and I saw tears on both their faces. They'd needed this journey as much as I had, maybe more. That evening, there was a celebration. We ate barbecue and drank beer and shared stories with people we'd spent 3 weeks riding beside. Patricia gave a speech about resilience and courage and refusing to let age define us. And when she introduced me and Melissa, the applause was thunderous. Later, as we were packing up to leave, Melissa pulled me aside. Thank you, she said. For what? For showing me what's possible, for not giving up on me, for letting me be part of this. Thank you for apologizing, for trying, for being here. She hugged me then, and it wasn't perfunctory or obligatory. It was real. We flew home the next day. George picked us up from the airport in Cedar Falls, and as we drove through town, I looked out the window at the familiar streets and houses and trees. Everything looked the same, but I felt completely different. What's next? George asked. I've finished my pilot's license, I said. Then maybe Patricia and I plan another adventure, maybe travel to Europe, or Australia, or Antarctica. I haven't decided yet. And what about me? You're coming with me, Obviously. We're a team. He grinned. Damn right we are. The following week, I passed my check ride and earned my private pilot's license. Carol shook my hand and said, "You're one of the best students I've ever had, Helen. Most people your age wouldn't even try. You didn't just try, you excelled." "It turns out I'm good at things when people stop telling me I can't do them," I said. I bought a small share in a Cessna 172 at the airport, which meant I could fly whenever I wanted. George and I started taking weekend trips, flying to little towns across Iowa and beyond. We'd land at tiny airports, rent a car, explore, then fly home. It was freedom and adventure and partnership all rolled into one. Daniel and Melissa came over for dinner regularly now. The dynamic had shifted. They asked about our adventures instead of questioning our choices. Melissa told me about the marathon she was training for. Daniel talked about possibly taking sailing lessons. We were all finding our own ways to stay engaged with life. One evening in late summer, as we sat on the porch watching fireflies dance in the yard, Daniel said, "Mom, I need to tell you something." I looked at him. "What?" "I'm proud of you. Really proud. And I'm sorry it took me so long to see who you really are." "Better late than never," I said. "When I was a kid, I thought you were just Mom. Just someone who made dinner and did laundry and drove me to soccer practice. I didn't see you as a person with your own dreams and desires. And then when you got older, I made the same mistake again. I saw age instead of seeing you. Most people do," I said. "We live in a culture that treats aging like a disease instead of a stage of life. But I'm not sick. I'm not diminished. I'm just older and wiser and more free than I've ever been." "I get that now." Melissa spoke up. "You changed my life, Helen. I hope you know that." "How so?" "You showed me that it's never too late to become who you're meant to be. That growing older can mean growing into yourself instead of growing smaller. I'd spent my whole life being afraid of aging, of becoming irrelevant. But you're not irrelevant. You're more relevant than ever." I reached over and took her hand. "We're family, Melissa. Real family now. Not just by marriage." She smiled. "Real family." Lucy stopped by later that evening after Daniel and Melissa had left. She'd brought a bottle of wine, and we sat on the porch drinking it while George dozed in his chair. "So," Lucy said, "you got your revenge." "Did I? Come on. You bought a sports car, learned to fly, biked 1,000 miles, and turned your daughter-in-law into your cycling partner. If that's not revenge, I don't know what is." I laughed. "Maybe. But it wasn't really about revenge. It was about reclaiming myself, about remembering that I'm more than what other people think I am. Well, whatever it was, it worked. You're the talk of the town, the librarian who became an adventurer." "I was always an adventurer," I said. "I just forgot for a while." "So what's next? Skydiving? Mountain climbing?" "George and I are planning to fly to Alaska next summer. Patricia wants to join us. We're going to explore the interior, see the glaciers and the wildlife. At this rate, you'll be climbing Everest by the time you're 70. "Maybe I will." We sat in comfortable silence, drinking our wine and watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. Somewhere in the distance, a train whistle blew. A car drove past. The neighborhood cat prowled through the garden. Life felt full. Not perfect. Life is never perfect, but full, rich, meaningful. Melissa's attempt to take my car had been a catalyst, but what came after was all my doing. I'd chosen to fight back, not with anger or bitterness, but with action. I'd chosen to prove not just that I was capable, but that I was alive, truly, vibrantly alive. And in the process, I'd found something I'd lost along the way, myself. Not the mom version or the wife version or the librarian version, just Helen. Complicated, imperfect, 63-year-old Helen who could ride 1,000 miles and fly a plane and refuse to be diminished by anyone's expectations. That night, as George and I got ready for bed, he looked at me and said, "You know what I love most about this whole thing?" "What?" "Watching you bloom. You've always been beautiful, but now you're radiant." Radiant is a strong word for a 63-year-old woman with cyclist tan lines and perpetually wind-blown hair. "I'm serious. You glow. You've found something that makes you happy, and it shows." I kissed him. I found myself. I'd put her away for so long I almost forgot she existed. But she was there, waiting. I never forgot her, he said. I just waited for you to remember. As I lay in bed that night, listening to George breathe beside me and feeling the pleasant ache in my muscles from that morning's ride, I thought about Melissa standing in my living room saying I didn't need my car anymore. She'd been so sure, so confident in her assessment of my limitations. She couldn't have been more wrong. But in a strange way, I was grateful. Her audacity had awakened something in me. Her disrespect had sparked a revolution. Her attempt to diminish me had resulted in my expansion. The revenge, if you could call it that, wasn't in what I'd done to her. It was in what I'd done for myself. I'd refused to accept the narrative that aging meant declining. I'd refused to be managed, controlled, or diminished. I'd refused to be anything less than fully, completely alive. And that refusal, that fierce, stubborn, joyful refusal, had changed everything. The car she'd tried to donate? I still had it. Well, the new one. The red Passport that turned heads and made me smile every time I drove it. But more than that, I had my freedom, my independence, my sense of self. And nobody, not Melissa or anyone else, would ever take that from me again.